Hello, everybody. Yes.
So Ben is one of the key experts from Beavertown, and I won't steal his thunder. I will let him go through what he's about to show you. But hopefully you've all received your boxes of delights either yesterday or today. And Ben, over to you if you want to talk through yourself, Beavertown, and what's going to be happening.
Sorry, you're going to say, Lee, stop screen sharing. Give Ben the not all about you.
Great, thank you very much, guys, and thank you for the big up. I think expert might be a little far, but I will try and answer any possible questions. So yeah, I want to keep this like I'm pretty sort of relaxed. If anyone's got any questions at any point, just type it in the box or shout out. Please feel free to interrupt me. That would really help, because otherwise it's just me chatting at you guys for about 40 or so minutes. But yeah, basically we're going to try a load of the core range. I say a load of them, all of the core range. So you guys should have 7 beers, I believe. You should have yeah, all of them. And I'm going to take you through a little bit of like sort of a little bit of brewing detail, and then just like a little bit about the brewery in general as we go through. So most of them are going to be chronological. I do this a fair bit. So yeah, my name is Ben. I'm brand ambassador at Beavertown. That is my job. It means I get to do things like this, which is lovely. I'm currently at our new brewery, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But if everyone's got their beers, usually I start off with a bit about Beavertown, but I think, seeing as it's a Friday, we should go straight in with a beer, and I think we should go straight in with our new lager. So if you guys have got bones with you, and a glass, ideally, if you have got a glass, that makes it a little bit easier. So we're going to taste the beers in a sort of almost wine style tasting, if you will. So pour a little bit into the glass, give it a little swirl, wake it up, and then have a taste. We'll go through that together. In terms of the tasting size, completely up to you guys. Please don't feel pressured to try and get through a whole can. I've seen people do it. They're brave soldiers, and some come out better the other end than others. But I'm just going to be having a little bit myself personally. Little side note, it's also our staff party this evening. So I have, full disclosure, I have had a beer already, but just the one. Yeah, I'm going to be taking it fairly easy. Yeah, if everyone's got a bones, this is a beer we're really excited about. We've just launched it about 2 weeks ago with sort of full paid media press campaign. And we've been working on lagers for a long time. This recipe itself has been about 18 months in the works. So yeah, I'll explain to you a little bit more about how we got there. But I think we're just going to start with this one because it's the easiest going, it's the lightest, it's the least bitter, and it's the one I'm most excited about personally. So over our last few years, we've brewed sort of brewer style lagers, if you will, so tend to be hoppy lagers, quite bitter. This is the other end of the spectrum. It's meant to be accessible. With all of our beers, we talk about flavor profiles, hops, bitterness ratings. With this, we're staying away from that. We're going, this is a straight up drinkable lager. So going to do this sort of traditional tasting style, give it a little swirl, you get your hand over the top, you can sort of wake up the flavors a little bit, oxidize the beer if you want, and then get your nose in there. It's lager, and it tastes like it smells like it's going to taste great. So see what you guys think. There's only 2 hops in this one. They're super premium hops. There's a traditional Pilsner style hop, and there's more modern hop. Very low bitterness. The idea is that this is the most accessible, easygoing beer we've ever brewed. So we'll get more complex as we go, but I thought I'd start with this one as it's a good entry point.
Ben, this does actually taste quite different from some of your other core ranges as well.
Yeah, it's mostly around the bitterness. So we brew it in the same place with the same water. I mean, the yeast is different as well. So all of the beers we're going to taste after this, apart from one of them, use the same yeast, which creates quite a familiar flavour. But they all use the same water, mostly the same hops. But it's mainly down to the bitterness is lower on this, which is quite intentional. So yeah, that's our latest release. We're hoping it's going to be as big as our biggest beer, which is neck oil. We're really sort of pushing it at the minute. We want to compete alongside some of the other well-known London and UK brewers producing lager, because it's a whole different world that we're only just sort of stepping into.
Ben, could you maybe talk us through how you actually developed the new range?
Yeah, great. So I'll fill in sort of the details. I've got a little presentation I'm going to show you guys in a sec, but I'll fill in a lot of the details there. But with this beer, we basically spent the last 8 years on and off brewing different lagers, and they were always brewers' lagers. We let the brewers. Everyone loves a lager. We let the brewers sort of do what they want occasionally. And they were always super tasty, but really hoppy, really bitter, not really what the average lager drinker would want. So we decided to experiment with what the average lager drinker might want. And we actually started brewing this at Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. So we've got a brew kit there. And when the stadium closed to the public, we used that kit to just keep brewing lagers. So it takes about 27, 28 days to brew a lager. This is the 17th version of the lager, and with repeat brews to sort of settle in the recipe. So the first time you brew it, you'll get sort of the outline there, but then you've got to keep brewing it over and over again to really get the fine details. So yeah, about 17th brew this one was, repeat brews, and that was all from Tottenham Hotspur. So yeah, I'm gonna share with you my little presentation. Hang on, I know you guys are all very computer literate, so you might have to bear with me whilst I press the wrong buttons trying to make the screen full size. There we go. So it all starts with this chap. So we were founded by Logan Plant. He's our founder and CEO back in 2012. So he'd spent a bit of time. He was actually in a touring band. He'd spent a bit of time in the States, and he fell in love with what was typically an American style craft beer, something we see everywhere in the UK now, whether it's under the name craft beer or whether it's beer that we're just sort of more used to as a frequent drink. It was very rare in the UK at the time, but it was still a big thing in the States. So came back to the UK. There were a few importers importing American beers. There were a few small breweries in London and the rest of the UK making these sort of American style hoppy fruit sort of forward flavors. But yeah, Logan wanted to do it for himself. So he got a 25-litre rice pan, taught himself like a few basics, and he started brewing in his kitchen, realized he was sort of quite good at it. And so December 2011, we opened Duke's Brewing Q. So this restaurant in the bottom left. So this was an American style barbecue restaurant. We did a certain type of Texan barbecue. So we did super long smoked pork and beef. So the beef was about 16 hours smoked. The pork was about 12 hours smoked. We did different cuts, different sort of ribs. And the idea was that Logan was going to brew the beer to go with the food. So that's how the brewery first came to life. It was all sort of around exploring flavors and bringing these sort of quite exciting American flavors that we hadn't had in the UK as much to the UK. So our restaurant was amazing. It was packed most nights of the week, but it was tiny. We had about 60 seats. We had a bar on one side. We had an open kitchen with 2 smokers in that were going all day, all night. And then next to it, we had Logan's mash tun and a little fermentation vessel. And then we'd pump the beer down to the cellar to hand bottle it. But yeah, we officially came to life as Beavertown in February 2012 with our first brews of Neck Oil, Smog Rocket and 8 Ball, a couple of our winter beers. But Neck Oil was, as you can see on the right hand side, more of a best bitter. It was originally called a Black Country best bitter. Logan named it after a phrase his granddad would say. So it was kind of a known Black Country phrase of after work you say you were going down the pub for a neck oil, just meaning a sort of traditional best bitter. So named after his granddad in the similar style that his granddad loved, and that's sort of where neck oil came from. So we're gonna try neck oil next, actually. So if everyone's got their neck oil ready, this is there's a thing behind me of it as well. Neck oil is our biggest seller. by quite a considerable way now, actually. We probably brew and sell about 65 to 70% neck oil as opposed to the rest of our range. Logan calls it a sledgehammer on the bar. It goes into most bars and it outsells everything else quite quickly, which is a sort of an amazing place to be. We did have some stats last month which aren't confirmed but suggest that neck oil is now about 8% of all beer sold in UK pubs. So it's absolutely like Goliath size. So we've got to wait a couple more months to see if that's a sort of confirmed estimate. But yeah, it's everywhere and it's mega. But it's because it's super tasty. So yeah, pour a little bit into the glass, give it a little swirl, hand over the top if you want. So we can really get into sort of like the tasting notes and like the details and flavors. So obviously, tasting's always subjective. Everyone gets different things, but generally speaking, on the nose, neck oil's got a little bit of like orange citrus and maybe pineapple. It's quite subtle, but it's definitely that. A little bit of pineapple. And then in terms of flavor, the main sort of flavor that comes through, it's prevalent in a lot of craft style beers, is grapefruit. So you mainly get this sort of like really nice sort of dry grapefruit, but there's a little bit of passion fruit there as well. There's a little bit of sweetness. It's almost like a biscuit. You get that from the malt, sort of kind of a biscuity malt flavor, a little bit of honey, and then maybe something like lemongrass. It's kind of like a slight sourness. I would say I'm talking about fruit flavors and that sort of thing, but unless we say otherwise, all of our beers only contain the 4 ingredients that beer would usually contain, or the classic 4 ingredients, which is water, hops, malted barley, and yeast. It's just where you put those hops in and what type of hops they are that give you these sort of flavors or perceived flavors. And also, I would say, I forgot to mention, I have my name on my glass and my name on my shirt because it is our staff party. It's not just, I don't usually wear my name on my shirt and on my glass just in case like some, yeah, I just realised that might appear a little strange if any of you have seen me. So yeah, that's neck oil. It's a 4.3% session IPA. Session is sort of just in reference to that you can have a few pints of it because it's, you know, normal IPA or normal strength IPA would sort of be over 5%. Session refers to slightly lower in alcohol, meaning you can sort of have a few of them. So yeah, back to the Duke's days, and where we sort of come from. So Beavertown is actually named after the area that Duke's was in. So Duke's was in north-east London in Hackney, near Haggerston Station. There's a little sort of area that's called the Beauvoir Town. So it was sort of like built in the east to represent sort of like posher West London, but in the east it's kind of like a nice little pocket. But to the locals, it's been known as Beavertown. So it kind of made sense. Beavertown sounds a little bit American. We're obviously very American inspired. It's the name of the area that we started in, and it's kind of, you know, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek as well. It sounds like an old school brewery name, but we're obviously coming at it with a sort of new approach. So yeah, I've been at Beavertown for just over 8 years. I started as a bartender at Duke's Brew Kit. I worked there for 3.5 years before moving to the brewery itself. I've done a year of warehouse work. I've done tap rooms in between. I've done delivery driving for 1.5 years, which is rubbish. But now I moved to sales, and now I do sort of this sort of thing for the last 1.5 years or so. But a little bit before I started, this handsome gentleman, Nick Dwyer, he started at Duke's just before me. So he was a waiter and he was a graphic design student. And as soon as he started there and realised that Logan was brewing beer, said, "I want to do the designs for your beer." So yeah, end of 2013, Nick moves from the restaurant that he's worked at for 9 months or so to become full-time creative director at the brewery. Even though we only had about 6 staff, he basically named himself creative director. and carried that flag. But yeah, he's the sole designer and illustrator of everything Beavertown since then. So yeah, he's very, very busy, but it's all one guy, essentially. So there were tons of craft breweries in London popping up at the same time we were. Loads of them had amazing beer. Some of them had amazing brand. Not a lot of them had both, and we were just really lucky to be a brewery that had tasty beer and a sort of recognizable brand to go along. But yeah, you can see the bottom left, actually, this one. That was the first design of neck oil on the left, so that was pre-Nick. That was sort of what Logan had used from an outside company. Nick developed the design, and then that became the skulls of all the brewers, and then became the sort of landscape we know now. Black Betty here, this was the first beer to include skulls and skeletons. And then, yeah, the next beer we're going to try, Gamma Ray. You can see it started its life out as it brought the space theme to Beavertown. So I think they had a name, they had like a loose name, and then Nick was like, oh, I've got an idea where I can take the previous designs into this sort of new concept. And then, yeah, it became these Gamma Ray spacemen, and then they became the skeleton dead spacemen guys. So yeah, if everyone's got their Gamma Ray with them, we should try that now. So Gamma Ray has been like a really fundamental, important part of our brewery, just because we brewed it quite quickly after neck oil, but it was the beer that really like defined us and gave us our identity. So when Logan brewed this, this was the first time he was like, yes, that's what I've been trying to achieve. That's the beer I was looking for. You know, from his time in the States when he started brewing, he's like, that's how I wanted to make it. So, and it was also probably, it was our biggest seller for a while as well. And it's probably our most famous beer worldwide. But yeah, let's try some. So it's a 5.4% American Pale Ale. That basically just means that all the hops in it are American. The 6 hops, all American, and it gives it that very sort of like distinctive West Coast IPA flavour. So yeah, maybe hand over the top. Dan likes it. Give it a little swell. So on the nose, instantly it's like it pops a lot more. There's loads of like tropical fruit notes going on, loads of different like flavours coming out. Go into the flavour. It's a lot sort of bolder and rounder, and it's quite a bit more complex. It's probably like a little bit of mango, maybe a little bit of sort of papaya or something, but again, passion fruit, a little bit of grapefruit. It's just a whole sort of journey. And neck oil has got quite like a sharp bitterness. It kind of cuts off quite quickly, but Gamma Ray sort of fades away a little bit longer over time. So Gamma Ray is technically more bitter than neck oil, but it's also got a bit more sweetness to it. So it's a bit more of a journey. So I get this big explosion of flavors, and it kind of fades away into this like really soft, bitter landing. And yeah, it's a beer that we're super proud of, and very much made us who we are. It's our biggest export as well. It's the beer that goes most around the world. But yeah, once we had brewed this, everything else after it shared that sort of flavor profile in a way. So that baseline of flavors, like neck oil that we know now isn't the Black Country Best Bitter. I'll be fading around this. Well, we've got Al, we've got a few more to get through, and they're going up before they go down in terms of ABV. So yeah, good luck to everyone. So yeah.
Ben, we just had a quick question from Hazel, which says my favourite Beavertown beer was Queller. Any chance you'll be making any more?
That was a banging beer, yeah. That is a firm favourite with some of the old school staff. So we did actually brew it again once, and no one bought it. So we basically had about 1,000 cases of staff beers left of it. I'm hoping we will brew it again, and I'm going to push for it. So it was great. So it was a saison. and it was very much like neck oil, but but it was it had like that sort of Belgian farmyard sort of element to it. So it's slightly sour. It had a bit of like straw and hay going on as well. Yeah, delicious beer. I will heavily suggest that we look into that for next like springtime.
Is there a campaign going there then that we should kick off?
I think so. I think the more people who become vocal about it, and they'll be like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that. So yeah, definitely any help to get Kel back would be great. The artwork was great as well. It was like a guy shaving with biplanes. I really like that one. So yeah, back to these pages. We moved out the restaurant quite quickly, selling tons of beer through there. We moved up to Tottenham Hale. So we have a brewery still now in Tottenham Hale. We basically, I mean, when we originally moved in there, it was called Big Beaver because it was such a massive step up from where we'd been before. We did spend a little bit of time in Hackney Wick. We were there for about a year before we moved on to this brewery, but we just kept on adding units. So we started off with one, then we've got 4 units there now. We opened up a tap room. We started with these big vessels, and we basically just kept on adding more vessels as demand sort of caught up with us, and it always did. We're very much a brewery that's been lucky enough to struggle to brew enough beer to meet demand continuously. In fact, it's been a kind of a hassle to have to let customers down by not being able to brew enough. So when I started in the sales role for the first year, it was basically just apologizing to people and giving them slightly less beer than they ordered. And we didn't take on a new customer for almost 2 years at that point. But yeah, we've sort of got past that now. Yeah, you can see our tap room there, which is currently undergoing a revamp. We're actually spending some money on it for the first time ever, and it's going to be a sort of nicer experience. But also, we swapped for our packaged beers from being in bottles to cans. So this is quite a big risk for us because there weren't any UK breweries that were packaging into smaller cans full time. Some would sort of hire machines, like, you know, this is how we sort of first got into it. You rent a machine off someone and then you go into those cans. There was no one who was doing it full time, and we basically just went all in, invested into a canning line, which at the time was about 35 grand just to get the first sort of piece of equipment. And it was a big risk because bottles were seen as the premium option, cans were seen as the cheap option. But Logan has seen it happening a lot in the States, people using these smaller cans and or just cans in general. I mean, it's great that our artwork lends really nicely to them, but the main reason we chose to package into cans instead of bottles, excuse me, is because a can protects the beer from light pollution, and it protects the beer from the risk of oxidization. So essentially, by packaging into a can, we can keep the beer fresher for longer, and that's sort of the main reason we actually switched. It obviously paid off because everybody loved how the cans looked. So I think, what did we brew next? We were looking at our core range, and we realized we didn't have like a full-blown IPA in it, so that's where we're going. If everyone's got a Lupoloid to hand, that's the pink can. This beer can make or break your day, depending on how it's used, I guess. It's absolutely delicious, but go easy at 6.7%. So it's got a bit of an extra kick to it. So yeah, I did mention the ingredients we use. So Lupoloid is a beer that we use extra ingredients in. Lupoloid also has oats in. About 2 or 3 different types of oats. The reason we put oats into it is because, generally speaking, alcohol suppresses carbonation. So when you get a higher strength beer, it will feel really heavy. It'll kind of feel a bit flat. If you add oats, it opens up sort of the body of the beer. It makes the beer sort of lighter and fluffier, and it allows the hop flavor to come through, but without the alcohol being sort of overkill, if you will. So yeah, let's have a taste, see what you guys think. This was always my favorite until I realized like I can't have more than a can of it, otherwise I'm in big trouble. Yeah, it's a little bit different again. So on the nose, it's less kind of complex. It's like a little bit of papaya, like mango again, a little bit like gamma ray. In terms of the flavor, it's really punchy. For me, it's punchy, but it's kind of, it tastes a little bit more like riper tropical fruits, maybe even like stone fruits. Like definitely like a little bit of apricot going on there, like a really sort of like rich, punchy apricot flavor. And it's got a really nice, like solid bitterness. So it's kind of just a little bit of sweetness going on as well, but a nice sort of solid bitterness balances it out. And yeah, I'd say it was definitely more on the sort of ripe fruit ends. You can definitely taste the alcohol, but those oats do a great job of like lifting. Even when you pour it, you can see it's kind of like quite fluffy. It's quite light. The oats make it kind of just come back alive, really. I mean, you can taste all of those hop flavors without it sort of being weighed down by the alcohol. So yeah, what do you guys think? We did come up with we came up with the recipe for this by brewing 11 different versions and releasing them to pubs around Hackney with top trump style trading cards for each of them. And the idea was that customers would vote for their favorite, but it was very unscientific. People obviously had too many of them and then couldn't remember which was their favorite, and so I think we just chose our favorite in the end. But yeah, it was 11 different brews for this, and they were each their own beers.
Do you brew differently for your draft beer to what goes into the cans, or is it the same?
No, it's exactly the same. So it goes through brew process, fermentation, goes to the bright tanks, which are where the beer is held prior to packaging. In the bright tanks, we basically test for, we have a sensory team. So first point of call is we do 2 sensories a day, which is where a few of the sensory team and brewers will blind taste the beer against any other beer that we've brewed. Also old batches, new batches. If the beer doesn't score more than 8 out of 10, it doesn't get released. We also have a lab, which if there's any off flavors, it will then go to the lab, but sensory is the first point of call. And then, yeah, it just goes to the packaging line. It will go into keg or can. The beer will taste different, though, on draft to the can, depending on the dispense system. So it's a whole sort of other world of beer, I guess. But in the can, we use CO2 to carbonate, and CO2 tends to boost hop flavors. It tends to give you like more of a hoppy flavor. When you drink beer on draft, they might have a CO2 system, but they'll more likely have a 60-40 system. So that is when there's nitrogen and CO2 mixed, and nitrogen suppresses the hop flavor. So that's why often beer tastes better at the pub, because the nitrogen makes it kind of a bit smoother and a bit more mellow. So yeah, we don't package any differently, but how the beer is dispensed and kept will change the flavor. Like I love a beer on 60-40, that's my favorite. CO2 for some of them, like if it's lupulized, you want to get all those hop flavors. If it's the lager, you want and it's like Guinness is purely on nitro, like nitrogen, because that affects the way it sort of fluffs up and you get the hops coming through. But so I'm getting sidetracked. I find all that stuff like super interesting on how like the gas affects the flavor of the beer. It's kind of a bit nerdy and a bit too far. But yeah, if you go to your pub, you know it will taste different places depending on the system they have and what gases they're using.
We've just had another question in from Jeff, who asks, "Are you recruiting for any tasters at the moment?"
We're always recruiting. Weirdly, that job is really tough. I did it once, and I wasn't allowed to go back. Put it that way. I scored it all wrong. I got all the beers wrong and everything. That was a few years ago, but yeah, it sounds like a fun job. But they literally sit in a dark room with like someone else labels tasters, and it's dark room tasting like 5 different beers, and if they don't correctly pick the correct batch that we've just brewed and set them out, then that's it. It doesn't get released. So quite a lot of pressure as well, I imagine, because it's brews are getting quite big now. We're doing quite large scale stuff here.
Sounds really stressful and horrible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, really stressful job. Yeah, we do it twice a day. There's a whole team of them. I think it's a great job until there's something not right, and then you've got to explain why. And that's the tricky bit. And that's why I failed at it, finding those off flavors. So yeah, 2018 we were asked we were approached independently by Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. I know football brings up a lot. It brings up a bit of animosity. I can't even say. It brings up a lot of different feelings with different people. But as our local football club, they approached us and asked us to partner. So amazing experience. I don't know how we got it. It's just right time, right place. But we basically became the first brewery in the world to build a brew house in a football stadium. So yeah, it's been absolutely mental. We basically thought, yeah, we're going to sell a ton of beer through there. We had no idea how much. Every standard match day, we'll do about 16 to 20,000 pints, which is about 34% of the beer sales in the stadium on a normal day. Sometimes we'll do a little bit more. The busiest day we ever had was an NFL game. We sold out of all of our beer, and we sold 115,000 pints on one day in the stadium, which is mind-blowing and completely wiped us out for about 3 weeks. I was literally phoning around pubs being like, 6 kegs you wanted? Oh, I'm sorry, you can have 4, because we accidentally sold it all the other day. So yeah, it's an amazing venue. If any of you guys ever get to go, regardless of how you feel about the footballs, it's kind of a cool place to go. And we have been lucky enough to also just open our first pub after the restaurant. So about 3 weeks ago, we opened our first pub right opposite the stadium, and we had our first match day operating the pub opposite the stadium, and we sold 45 kegs of beer from this tiny pub, which is called Corner Pin. So I'm just going to do the maths. 45 times 2, that's 2,300 pints from a tiny pub on a Sunday. So yeah, it's kind of mental what that stadium's done. We also released our own beer that's only available at the stadium or the Corner Pin now. But yeah, that comes around to, let me just have a little sneak what my next slide is, comes around to us releasing Bloody Hell into the core range. So if everyone's got their Bloody Hell ready, this is now full blown my favourite beer. This is the one I go to. It's either this or the lager, to be honest. It's one of the two.
Just quickly coming back to the Tottenham Stadium, Ben, you've got some interesting pumps there, haven't you?
They're bottom fill glasses, yeah. So our tap room in the southeast corner is just a normal pouring. Around the stadium, they have bottom fill glasses, which can fill in, I think it's about 3 seconds or something. It's basically a magnet. So you stick the glass down, beer goes in the bottom, the magnet is weighted and sticks to the bottom of the glass, which is great until you see, I literally the first time I went to the stadium, I saw a guy standing with his son, and he was looking at the glass, and he was like sort of tapping it, and he just tapped it just a bit too much, and the whole pint emptied on his shoes, and he just got it. I mean, I'm equally as interested in seeing how that works, but once I saw him do that, I was like, just keep your hands, just hold the glass on the side, that's fine, drink it like a normal person. But yeah, those are pretty cool. It also means that to serve that fast, they super chill the beer. So the colder the beer is, the less carbonation you get when you're serving it. And there's some really cool stats from the stadium, like they have a team of 20 people in the cellar whose job it is just to change kegs, like just for the game. 20 people. That's how fast they're changing. And like most of our kegs are about 50 pints, and that is enough to fill a line. So one line of beer will like run out, and by the time like a whole keg is just filling between the keg and the faucet. So we actually supply the stadium with 350 litre tankards. So we deliver them with forklifts, and just because it's far more efficient than filling thousands and thousands of kegs. But yeah, good question. And we're on to Bloody Hell. So Bloody Hell used to be 7.2%. It used to be a seasonal beer, and it was different every year. Sometimes it was great, sometimes it was terrible. Once we accidentally brewed it with waxed blood oranges, which meant we couldn't sell it. And when I was a bartender in the restaurant, we had a cellar full of waxed blood orange bottles. And to drink it as staff, we would pour it through coffee filters to get all the wax out. And the hangover was terrible, but it was a delicious free beer. Now it's a very different beast. It's available all year round. It's 5.5%. It's a bit more approachable. It's called a blood orange IPA because this is the first beer we're tasting that actually has any fruit in it. So it has blood orange comminute, which is basically a whole blood orange smashed. So you get the citrus, the juice, and the oils. But it's not a fruit beer. We didn't want to make a fruit beer. So it's basically a well-balanced IPA with a heavy blood orange influence. So see what you think. This is my favorite. I saw it was, sorry, I forgot your name, who loved the Kel. It was your second favorite. Hazel. Yes. It's delicious. You have good taste. So yeah, let's see what you think. On the nose, I mean, it's super orangey. On the nose, you're like, it tastes like orange juice. It's really bright, really sort of like citrusy, acidic, really fresh. In terms of the flavor, it's got this sort of like bright orange flavor at the beginning, which quickly turns into but for me, it's like a blood orange marmalade. It's kind of like the bitterness of a marmalade, but it's not too like heavy and sticky. It's still got this sort of like bright freshness going on. There's a little bit of pine in there, but it's actually surprisingly refreshing. So yeah, this is the one I always personally go back to because it's got really nice IPA flavor. You can taste the hops. It's got this sort of like fruit flavor cutting through. This really nice bitterness, but it's still refreshing and drinkable. And also, it's a slightly more acceptable ABV than 6.7. So 5.5 is like a solid. That's okay to drink regularly. Sam didn't have any lunch, it would appear. That's a grave danger. I do these on Fridays for like groups like yourself, but I also do this for like pub groups, and through lockdowns we were doing it for bartenders, and I was doing up to 3 of these a day for bartenders, and it was like in the end I just had to pretend to drink the beer. I was like, there's no way I can finish sentences after doing like 3 hours of just solid different beer tasting. So yeah, that's me just having a little brag about how my job is great sometimes. It's not always fantastic, but no, it's pretty good doing these things.
So do you ever try to influence the ABV, or is that just a byproduct of the materials you put into the beer? Which chicken or egg, I suppose, is what I'm asking.
Experience, very good question. So it's basically through the years with experience, we have a target ABV. So we'll basically like have a concept of a beer, like a brewer will suggest something, we'll chat among the different departments, sales team and marketing team, like what do people want, what do we want to make, or a brewer will be like, I've got this mad idea. And then we'll be like, okay, let's refine it. What is this beer? And usually it starts off as specials. So we brew about 100 different special beers and random beers every year. We've just got hard seltzer on downstairs, which is basically a fruit water with non-beer derived just alcohol. So yeah, it's wild stuff. We do like pastry stouts and all that sort of thing. But yeah, basically we'll be like, here's the target ABV, and we will brew it this way to get to that. And ABV is really interesting because it has to only be within certain parameters. So Lupoloid at 6.7, we once brewed one that was 7.8, and it was still within the parameter to be that. And well, we thought it was about 7.8. It was still within the parameters to be called 6.7, because as you get over, I think it's over 6, you're like allowed a 1% leeway. Under 5, you're allowed like 0.4% leeway. And then with the lower nose, you have to be like bang on. But yeah, as the ABV goes up, there's a bit more sort of wiggle room in the fermentation. Okay. Yeah, good question. It's basically a target. We aim for it. If it's not that, we have to adjust things.
Thanks.
Good question. Thank you, Jonathan. So yeah, I was talking about football. Not everyone loves football. I'll move on from football because not everyone does. Some people do. So there was actually something else I was going to add in between, but I've forgotten that now. So yeah, we did just after the Tottenham deal, we actually partnered with Heineken as well. So we're still independently operated. We operate as an independent business. We're still majority owned by Logan and his wife Bridget. We have financial obligation to Heineken. Basically, we wanted to carry on growing. We wanted more routes to market, and we wanted the finance to build a new brewery. So yeah, we sold a minority share to them so that we could build Beaver World, which is where I am right now. So yeah, we're 9.5 years old. We've gone from Logan literally brewing in a kitchen of a restaurant or in his own home to having the largest brewery in London. So this is a 6-acre site. We've just started brewing 24 hours a day, 4 days a week. We're currently on a run rate here to brew 45 million pints a year. We have a target of 90 million pints a year within the next sort of 18 months, which is where we add more outside fermentation vessels. We're brewing about 36 brews a week, and each brew is 28,000 pints. So it's really hard to like try and put a scale on that, but it's basically mental. It's a really cool site. So we're right opposite. In fact, where's the camera? How do I make it go the other direction? I should have planned. I should have thought about this, shouldn't I? No, that turns it off. Oh, I'll just turn around the computer. So if you can see over there, there's a reservoir, and all of the water we use for brewing comes from the reservoir. We have some tanks. I can give you a brewery tour. We have some tanks that we use to treat the water with reverse osmosis, and then sorry, there's lots of shouting going on, and then we brew in here basically. So that's the main brew kit. This element here is it's a 5-tank system. The first 4 tanks take about 5.5 hours. Then it goes over to the fermenters. That's that bit again. But basically, it means that we get no waste water. So any water we don't use goes to our own treatment plant and then goes straight back to the reservoir, which is pretty cool. All along as well, any spent grains from the malts go to local farmers for cattle feed. So it means that the only sort of waste we get here is sort of staff-based waste and a little bit of heat. We're trying to get better at recycling the heat here, and then also maybe like putting some solar panels on or something like that as well. But it's a pretty cool space. We've only been brewing here for a year. It's still pretty new for us, but we're hoping we can have people over for tours and that sort of thing at some point. We don't yet have a visitor centre, but one day we'll see.
Ben, I'm interested, right? What does your fitness routine look like, given you've got all this beer on tap? How do you stave off the keg? How do you look as slight as you do? Walk us through.
I think to start with, thank you for such a beautifully worded compliment. I'll take that. I think it's coming for me. I think I'm in trouble within the next year or so. I can feel it. I have to start exercising now. It's not just I can't just get away with just drinking beers. So yeah, it's definitely coming for me very soon. Has Beavertown ever been hacked? I don't think we've been hacked. We've had some of those like emails that someone is like from Logan. It's not from Logan, and then someone opens it, and then something else happens. But I don't think we've basically got we've got two IT guys. We're also supported by a third-party company. In terms of that stuff, I really wouldn't like to comment. That's something that I actually have very little clue about. I can give you some contact details of someone within Beavertown who might be able to answer your question better, though. So we haven't been hacked. Hopefully we won't be hacked. But I have been on one of these before where I heard all about the hacking and the statistics, and it's actually terrifying. That sort of stuck with me for a little while, isn't it? Like, no, I'm not going to start repeating bad stats, but I was tempted. They are scary. So it is something that I'm sure we're thinking about. I hope they've thought about it. I did actually mention it to one of the IT guys. I was like, I was on this call and they said that everyone gets hacked all the time. It's really dangerous. But yeah, I think
it was maybe whether we could redirect some orders somewhere. I think that may be what it's aimed at. Yeah. All of a sudden, that pallet of beer has ended up at Richard's house. How did that happen? Lee, we'll have a chat later.
Yeah, see what you can do. Because if you can, drop one at mine, and we'll figure it out. So yeah, how many beers have we had? We've got 2 left. Cool. So where are we on to? Around this time, we also collaborate with Rough Trade Records. So I don't know if you guys know, there's a Rough Trade Records in like Nottingham and Bristol, and there's a couple in London. So we've got all of our beers selling in there, which is really cool. We've always brewed loads of different specials. So that's a bunch on the lager. That's okay. Jumped ahead of myself. And yeah, we've always seen like the ABV of beer going sort of up and up. So the more recent trend has been like the last couple of years, people asking for lower strength beers. So I know we've gone through all the stronger ones now, and I'm sort of doing this chronologically, except for the lager. So I think next we're going to try the Nanobot. So this is our 2.8% super session. So this came about when we did a collaboration with Borderlands, the game. I don't know if any of you have ever played that. Really fun. But the idea was, I mean, when we first did it, it was meant to be a beer that you could drink and sort of stay sharp to play a game. But then it developed into something a bit more. So we had a lot of people asking about it because, you want to go down maybe midweek, you want to go and see your friends at the pub, you want to have a pint, you want to have some alcohol, but you don't want to be like, you want to have a couple of pints but not necessarily feel the full effect. So this sort of came about as like another option, something that we hadn't done before. And it's quite different to all of the ones we've tried so far. So if everyone's got an Nanobot, I'd love to know what you think. For me, it's a very different beer indeed, actually. So most of our beers like lead on these kind of like quite hoppy tropical fruit notes. This is really subtly hoppy. It's like a little bit citrusy, a little bit peachy on the nose. In terms of flavor, it's kind of more savory. So where it doesn't have as much alcohol, we had to fill that sort of like flavor profile and that palate with something else. So it's kind of a bit more, yeah, it's definitely more savory. It's almost a bit like herbaceous. We also did add oats to this beer as well, but the oats are used in this context to give the beer a bit more body rather than to sort of take away from the alcohol. But yeah, it's a beer we're really proud of. It's on draft a few places. It tastes absolutely banging on draft. It's some people's firm favourite, and yeah, it's a cute little design too. Anyone got any thoughts on that? What's been the favourite so far? A Beavertown Nano Soup, possibly. I think you have to drink, quite a lot for that to happen. So I've missed most of the chat so far, so I'm just trying to be a bit more on it with that. But yeah, I'll carry on taking you through to the last beer we're going to try. So I already mentioned Bones. So Laser Crush. This, aside from Bones, this was sort of our penultimate release for you. It was the last one before that. So we've been working on this recipe. If everyone's got one almost ready to have a little taste. We worked on this for about 2 years. So we brew our beer in Enfield, where I am now. Tottenham Hale, a little bit further down the canal from here. Also Tottenham Football Club Stadium. We also brew our beer with Adnams in Southwold. We've used a few other contractors around the UK since then, and we also brew at 2 locations in Belgium. So we use Brabandeer, which are like a really traditional old school brewery, to brew neck oil. We also use De Proof, which is like this modern brewery that's sort of like pushing the boundaries of sort of like technological brewing. So yeah, we worked with those guys at De Proof for about 2 years to come up with the recipe for Laser Crush. It's our alcohol-free IPA, so 0.3%, very different beast again. And the reason it's super exciting for us is, I mean, not just that it's kind of delicious, but most alcohol-free beers are brewed either by using like a tiny bit of malt so that you get less starches that are converted to sugars and then converted to alcohol, or you brew the beer like normal and then you take out the alcohol with osmosis, reverse osmosis. With Laser Crush, we've got to do something completely different. Got to bear with me, it sounds absurdly like hipster, but we used a new strain of Norwegian yeast that doesn't ferment the same way that traditional yeast ferments. This yeast will eat the sugars but not produce alcohol as a byproduct. So we got to brew a beer that we wanted, how we wanted, with these sort of light flavors, but the result was 0.3% alcohol instead of, you know, a sort of 3 or 4% alcohol beer. That's because the yeast eats one type of sugar and not another type, and it also means that the beer tastes a little bit different. So yeah, if everyone's got theirs ready, I'm going to finish this one. See what you think. So for me, this is like a little bit of a hybrid beer almost. It's definitely not a soft drink, but it hits that spot of feeling like a beer and doing the job that you want a beer to do. I'm just going to go straight for a taste, actually. So it's definitely a little bit sweeter. That's where the yeast hasn't eaten all the sugars to make the alcohol. It's really like peachy, and for me it actually tastes like a peach iced tea with like a really sort of like beery finish, and I've got no better way of explaining it than that. Like loads of tasting notes and stuff, and I'm like, this is like a peach iced tea that's kind of beery, but it's really great. It's one of those beers that like I'll happily have over the weekend or through the week when I'm trying to not have a beer and have something a little bit different. Also, when I have been driving my little van around London and I've been like super thirsty, I have cracked one, but it feels very wrong. Having one of those in you know, I did it once. I don't do it again because I don't know if it's actually illegal or not. It's 0.3, so it does have some alcohol in it. But I had a little sip of that and I was like, oh, that feels like a beer. I definitely shouldn't be driving, even though it was completely safe. I think that was the ultimate point when I was like, yeah, it definitely feels like a beer. But yeah, super delicious. Something again we're really proud of because it took so long to sort of develop and work on. So at the minute, oh yeah, I did forget kind of a key point. All of our beers are vegan, natural, and unpasteurized, except for Laser Crush. So we have to pasteurize Laser Crush, which is basically when you sort of heat up the beer later to kill off any bacteria. So usually that's associated with like killing off good bacteria and killing off flavor. But we had to do it with Laser Crush because otherwise the beer might ferment again in the can, which means that we can sell a 0.3% beer, and by the time it arrives at someone's house, it could have like 1 or 2% in it, alcohol. So yeah, pasteurize it, and then it doesn't continue to ferment, which does also mean that it's only in the can at the minute. We're hoping to get it on keg, but again, if you serve it in a pub and the pub maybe is not cleaning the lines properly and there's a little bit of yeast left in the line, it can ferment in the line and be alcoholic overnight by the time someone pours it, more alcoholic, should I say. And also, where there's no alcohol, little alcohol, carbonation goes wild. So if you put this in a keg, you run the risk of the kegs running at extremely high pressures to the point where they might even explode. So yeah, it's a whole like engineering feat to get this beer into a keg, but we're hoping to soon. And I know I've kept you guys for quite a while, so I'm just going to zip through the last little bit. Now I've tried the beers. That's our current core range. We've got 8 Ball, Black Betty and Smog Rocket coming out, I think this week or maybe next week. So these are our winter seasonals. We've tried everything else so far. As I mentioned earlier, we've also brewed about, I think this year we brewed about 45 to 50 different specials. We also have a huge sort of part of our brewery in terms of interesting ideas and research and development and all that stuff. So we have something called the Tempest Project. I should have had some photos actually. So Tempest Project is sort of like Logan's baby part of the brewery. So we have 450 different barrels from like vineyards and whiskey makers and tequila makers in one corner of our warehouse, and we basically experiment with wild yeast and barrel aging beer. So some days we'll leave the doors open with the open vessel, let the natural yeast from the air come and start fermenting the beer. and then we stick it into different barrels to see what happens. So great one is espresso. So it's a coffee stout. We brew it every year. Half of it we put into cans, like black cans, fresh. It's about 8.5% usually. And the other half we put into Maker's Mark barrels for about 18 months. And the beer comes out like with this sort of like added sort of like charcoal vanilla flavor. You also get like a bit more sweetness, and the ABV usually goes up to about sort of 10 or 11%. So yeah, Tempest is a really big part of our brewery and how we learn about brewing and sort of figure things out. But yeah, where are we going from here? A little bit further around the world. So that's our beer there in the northern circle at the top of Sweden. So if you go to Stockholm, you'll be able to drink Gamma Ray in about 80 different pubs and bars. Stockholm's our biggest, sorry, it's not Stockholm's, but Sweden is our biggest bar of Gamma Ray outside the UK. A favourite of the Spanish is Lupuloid, that's their favourite. You can drink our beers on tap in about 150 different venues in Italy. We've just started distributing to Israel, which is this picture with the snake. You know, I think that could be anywhere really, but that did come from Israel. We've just started distributing in Iceland as well, which is pretty cool. We sell mostly through like the Baltics and all of sort of Central Europe. We haven't gotten down to the Balkans just yet, but we're hoping to eventually. And yeah, we've sold our beer before to Australia, but when we were struggling to sell beer to enough London pubs, we stopped doing that because it also doesn't travel so well. So we're hoping that one day we'll get back to Australia, maybe the States and Japan, possibly with a brew site in southern Asia somewhere. But you know, that's long-term plans. And that's about it. Thank you very much for listening to me for so long. Here's a couple of extra bonus pictures of us back in the Dukes days. So that's Nick in the centre, our creative director, and that's us working on the bar wearing some cheerleader outfits because that's what we used to like to do. So yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. Please, questions, go for it if you have any. Cheers.
Thanks again, Ben. That was brilliant, really good. Almost as good as the first one.
Well, thank you for listening and trying all the beers with me as well. You know, and thank you very much for having us. You know, I personally really enjoy doing these things, and it's great to have an audience that is having a nice time. So yeah, cheers.
I think there's 28 people here who are actually jealous that you've got a Christmas party in Beavertown Brewery tonight. I think there's a lot of people who want to be joining you. But before we sort of sign off, are there any questions that anybody's got for Ben while we've got him?
When's the next one?
Keep an eye on the EACS website. We'll invite you.
I think Ed had a question, didn't he, about where in Enfield is it located?
Sorry, I have missed some questions as well. So yeah, thank you. We are about a 5-minute walk from Ponder's End. So we're quite near to Camden actually, which just only heightens the rivalry. But yeah, at the minute we don't have like anywhere for visitors to come. It's kind of quite tricky to find your way in the building as an employee. I mean, it looks cool inside now, though. But we're very soon reopening the tap room in Tottenham Hale, so that's about 3 weeks away. But yeah, it's pretty cool all over there. It's very much an office that hasn't been lived in yet. It's kind of still new. Yeah, there's some artwork slowly going up. This is Nick's office. Oh yeah, I can take on a personal tour of Nick's office. So it's like artwork all on the floor. Stuff everywhere. I mean, he painted it orange, who knows. And some more artwork over here. There's some cool stuff going around. So yeah, this is Enfield, but Tottenham Hale will be opening again soon. So yeah, hopefully we'll see you there.
Ben, quick question. Sorry, just something I just thought of. Did the pandemic affect you at all?
Yeah, massively. So we were about 85% on trade, so we lost about 85% of our business overnight, essentially when the pubs closed. So it wiped us out, but we have like a really good fan base and customer base, and our web shop went from about £20,000 a month to up to about £400,000 a month at its peak. which really saved us and kept us going. We also did new for old kegs, so we were the smallest brewery to do that. So basically a lot of pubs had old kegs sat in their cellar, and we didn't want them selling bad beer, but we also wanted to support them. So we spent about 1.2 million replacing all of those kegs in the cellars for when the pubs reopened. So yeah, we were about the smallest brewery that did that, and it was a big expense, but it really paid off because, you know, we basically showed our customers that we're investing in them and making sure that, you know, we just about kept our head above water, because we just bloody spent about 28 million on this brewery. So we were just somehow got through, but now, yeah, we're doing better than ever. So yeah, it's going really well for us at the minute, and we're hoping to keep on riding that up curve a little bit further, so we can get up to our target here of 90 million pints a year, which is silly.
In fact, Richard has just posted a question that was going to be next on my lips, which was there's obviously a growing trend at the moment for home kegs and being able to do the home sort of delivery. Are you looking at doing that sort of thing as well?
So we have two packaging lines here, kegs and cans, and we have a little bit of space for a third packaging line, which is currently undecided. It could be those like mini kegs or things for customers to use at home. So that is a potential. We haven't committed to any ideas or anything yet. The other thing you could look into is if you want, if you've got a home pub, we do have a few distributors that sell kegs directly to customers, depending on where you are. Some of them can also supply some of the kit to do it. If you've got like just a party, like they can hire you a kegerator to pour the beer for the weekend. In terms of like, yeah, the mini kegs, that's a possibility. If you do have a serious home pub and you would like a full-size normal keg, either steel or key keg, feel free to send me an email. I'll point you in the right direction where you can just get one keg delivered home.
Brilliant. Right, are there any other questions before we close off? I think not. Well, thanks ever so much again, Ben. Brilliant as ever. And we all hope you enjoy your party this evening.
Yeah, that's the plan, is to stay sensible, right? That's always the plan. So yeah, thank you very much, guys. I very much appreciate you listening to the story of Beavertown and having some beers with us. So cheers again.
Thanks, Ben.
Cheers, Ben.